Okay, hey folks, Mark Locklear here. Quick screencast on chapter 6. And let's see, we want to share this top one. So chapter 6 is how to code summary queries. And this is sort of a good, just a good next step to get more refined with your queries. What we're doing here is this idea of sort of aggregating or summarizing data. And so it does require a bit of a mind shift. And, up to this point, we're just doing queries that are giving us sort of um, result sets that where we see the entire results return. Now we're sort of taking those result sets that are listed out, but we're beginning to aggregate or summarize them. And I think we'll see that when we look at some examples. But for this chapter, I'm focusing on the aggregate functions and then the summarizing data section. The window functions, certainly read that, digest as much as you can. You may have some quiz questions on it, but for purposes of coding exercises, to me, it's a little outside the scope of the class. It's a bit it's more a bit more of an advanced, I would say, advanced SQL functions. So for purposes of this class, at least with regard to the coding exercises, you won't have any coding exercises that are related to Windows functions. They'll be all the aggregate functions and then the sort of summarizing of data. Okay, so I'm going to look at a few things here and then we're going to look at one of the exercises. So this idea of aggregate functions is basically, these are sort of the basic functions here. Things like average, sum, min, max, count. These are all things. And again, the idea here is where, we're taking the rows that are returned and then we're sort of combining them, counting them, sum, doing some some sort of summary type task on those things. So here's a real basic example here. In this case, we're using the count function. So collect count star. Star just means we're going to count all of the rows that are returned. So select count as number of invoices. So in this case, we're counting the number of invoices. And then we've got the sum total that we're doing here too. In this case, invoice total minus payment total minus credit total. Then we're going to list that as total due. And then, of course, we're going to get that from the invoices table. And then we've got a simple where clause. Again, we don't want to include anything that doesn't have an invoice total assigned to it, or if the invoice total is 0 or less, then we don't want to include it. So that's just a good basic example. Queries that use aggregate functions. So let's maybe look at some more advanced examples here. So in this case, we're just creating a column here that has after, in this case, after 1/1/2022. And again, we're doing a count here. So again, counting the number of invoices. In this case, we're going to get an average of the invoice totals, calling another sum function. And then again, we're getting this from the invoices table, where in this case, we're just adding a where clause where invoice date is greater than 2022-01-01. Okay. Example of that, there's some examples of min, max here, but again, those, once you sort of understand generally this idea of, and again, this idea of functions here works the same way it does in other programming language. We've got some function name, and then we're passing some number of arguments to it, and then a result is being returned back. Again, the sort of twist is that we're adding these in with SQL queries where these functions are being applied to one or more rows or result sets that are being returned. Okay, in the how to group and summarize data sections, the group by, we get into the group by and having clauses. So let's look at a couple of examples there. So similar query here where selecting vendor ID, we've got an average. We're going to be getting an average of the invoice totals from invoices, and then notice we're doing this group by vendor ID, okay? So here in this case, we're returning all of the invoice amounts, but for each vendor, so for each vendor, we're going to execute this average or this invoice total here, getting the average of what the invoice total is. So again, this idea of summarizing data in this case, in sort of real in sort of plain English, what we're doing is what we're asking for here is, hey, give me the average invoice for each vendor. So again, if you do the math in your head, if you actually try to look at a spreadsheet in Excel, let's say, and actually do the math here, just as an example, you take vendor ID 110, you would get each of the invoice amounts that is associated with vendor 110. You would add all of those up and then get an average for those. So again, it's pretty powerful when you start to think about it. That again, imagine a scenario where you've got thousands, if not millions, of invoices for a given vendor. So being able to use SQL to do these sorts of queries is a super powerful thing. I mean, the last thing before we look at the example is I highlighted this because the difference in the having and the where clause is often is very subtle. And so this statement sort of stuck out at me as the best way to describe the difference in those. So I'll just sort of read what I've got highlighted here. It says, first, the having clause can include aggregate functions as shown in the first example, but the where clause can't. That's because the search condition in the where clause is applied before the rows are grouped. So that's sort of the key there, that the search condition in a where clause, it's applied before the grouping actually happens. And again, this is on page 170. So you can go back and look at the previous example there to sort of get a sense of how that applies. But again, and a lot of this too, without actually going in and running queries and getting familiar with it that way, it's sort of tough to separate out the difference in those two, and often you can use one or the other depending on the query you're trying to do, or you could use either of them depending on the query you're trying to do, but there's times when only one is going to work. So again, a lot of that just comes with experience. Okay, I'm going to stop there as far as the book content goes, and let's work through one of the guitar shop exercises. In fact, this is one I think I've got assigned to you, number 3. I won't do the entire thing, but we'll sort of work through a good portion of this. So let's just sort of read through this and think about it together, and let's see how far we can get. So first it says, write a select statement that returns one row for each customer that has orders with these columns. So first thing is, be thinking about the tables here. And in this case, like one thing you can do is go ahead and I'm already in the guitar shop exercises database here. So if I do show tables, first thing I can do is sort of look at that, and okay, that's going to sort of refamiliarize where I'm at with what tables are included in the guitar shop, in the My Guitar Shop database. And again, if I look at the requirements here, select statement that returns one row for each customer that has orders in these columns. So right offhand, if I'm thinking about tables, I know the customers table and the orders table I'm going to probably need. So I'm going to go here and just write tables, and then I'm going to say customers, orders, and then there may be some more customers or orders with these columns. So the email address column from the customers table. Okay. Next one says the sum of the item price in the order items table multiplied by the quantity in the orders items table. Okay, so this is a new table I need to be thinking about. So I'm going to say order items. Okay. Next one says the sum of the discount amount column in the orders item table, so still in the order items table, multiplied by the quantity in the orders items table. And then finally, we've got some sort statements, sort the result descending sequence by the item price total for each customer. Okay. All right. So where do we want to start here? So first thing is I may want to just go back and familiarize myself with the with each of these tables here. So I can, again, the describe statement is a quick way to do that. So if I do describe customers, I can quickly see that. Now I've also got a tool here. I'll put a link to this inside the exercise, but and so you can use this tool too, and you may have already been using this at this point, but dbdiagram.io. This allows you to import database structures so you can have a visual and sort of see what they look like. So in this case, let's look at the customer. So in this case, I've got the three tables in question here that we know we're going to need to run our quick query from: customers, order, items, and then the orders table. And then what's also handy here, notice the relationships between these. We can see how these tables are related to one another. So in this case, orders is related to customer ID through, or orders is related to customers through the customer underscore ID field. And then I can also see, if we notice carefully and look carefully, you can see a one-to-many. Notice there's a one highlighted over on the customer side. And then you've got this sort of triangle looking shape over on the order side. That means that that's a one-to-many relationship. So in this case, a customer can have many orders. That makes sense, right? Think about if you're an Amazon customer, you may order from them all the time. So again, one customer can have many orders. And then the order item relationship between these two has an order can have many order items. That sort of makes sense too, right? Again, think about an Amazon scenario where at any one time you may place an order. You may have multiple items inside that order. And then that relationship, of course, is based on the order ID. So again, one order can have many order items. Okay. So going back to our scratch pad here, I mean, the first thing I'm going to do is just say, you know what, I just want to select email. I'm going to let me just select email address from customers. And I'm going to go ahead and just put that C there, because as I build this query out using an alias like that is going to make it a lot more handy. So obviously I'm seeing there, okay, that's a good sanity check for me, that I know that the email address field exists inside customers. I can also see what those email addresses are. And then let's go ahead and work out the join relationship that we're looking for. So in this case, I'm just going to sort of step this up and look at something like this, right? So in this case, I'm going to select email address from customers. I'm going to join orders on customer ID between the orders table and the customers table. So join orders O on C.customer ID equals O.customer ID. And then also the join orders that we're looking at too, we need to find that's going to be joined on the order ID. And that makes sense, again, looking back at our relationship diagram here, that again, orders is the relationships based on this order ID, and then customers, it's based on this customer ID. So let's see if I can paste that in and get that to run. Okay, so I'm feeling good about that, right? Notice I'm getting email addresses returned, but notice I'm getting multiple email addresses, right? Now, part of this is because I'm not having grouped by anything yet. So I could group by email address here if I wanted to, and I think I would probably get the same number of rows, but let's add a group by statement here and see if indeed that is what happens. If I add that in here. Okay, yeah. So I actually get 7 rows return here now. And again, these are the same, this result set, same email addresses as I have down here. There's no duplicates here, right? Basically, I've just, again, I've grouped them. I don't want to say this is not a distinct statement or I'm not getting rid of the other rows. I'm just combining all of the email addresses so there aren't any duplicates that are being displayed. Okay. So that's sort of one step. And then if I go back to the exercise, so the other thing we're trying to do is these sum statements that it's asking for. So let's see if we can sort of work through those. This one says, so we want to get the sum of the item price in the order items table multiplied by the quantity in that same table, right? So price multiplied times quantity. So I'm going to do a sum here. So I'm going to add this. This is going to be part of the select statement. So let's do, just going to sort of, so I'm going to select email address. I'm going to do sum. And then I want to get order or item price times quantity. And then let's go ahead and do an as statement. We'll do as item price total. And let's see, that should run. Okay, not quite. Looks like I've got I'm looking at this error here and it says order right, and that's not quite right. Order items. Let's see here. Okay, I forget that I had it. I think I had a comma after this order price or this sum statement that we didn't need. Anyway, at this rate, this should run for us. Again, we're going to select email address, and then we're doing our sum here for the item price total. We're getting this from the customers table. Then we're doing our joins on both the orders and the order items table. And in this case, we're going to group by email address. All right. If we put this in, we run, we get our results there. Okay. And then, so the only thing really to add here are, we need to add the second sum statement. So if we go back here, so the other one would be sum the discount amount column, and we're going to multiply that times the order items. So again, very similar to what we did here, rather than item price and quantity, we'd be doing, yeah, really the discount amount. We could change this to discount amount, I think. And we would get, in fact, we can just sanity check that real quick. Yeah, see, that actually runs too. Notice that the numbers are different here. So you'd want to modify the column heading for that. But let me just bring that back. Okay. So I think I'm going to stop there. That's sort of a little bit about how you'd wrap your brain around this. And again, sort of start to slowly build these queries out. You're not going to write the entire thing in one sitting, but rather I'm showing you this sort of iterative approach. So you're sort of iterating a little bit at the time, add to the query. Again, the last, well, you'd want to add that second sum statement in addition to also adding an order by clause here. Okay. All righty, I'm going to stop there. As always, if you have questions, just let me know. Thanks.